guys you're about to meet, don't think of them as human beings. We allow them into the outside world for a single purpose: to flush out and hunt down criminals just like themselves.
Greetings and welcome to the Nerd College. Although our topic today conjures images of cyberpunk cities and holograms far more readily than it does spooky season vibes, I personally can't imagine anything scarier than a future in which our lives and freedoms are conditional based on how positive our mental states are. As requested by our viewers, today we'll be discussing Psychopass, the psychological cyberpunk anime franchise created by Production IG that was meant to serve as a successor to Mamoru Oshii's phenomenal success, Ghost in the Shell, which they also produced. Please check out our video on Ghost in the Shell for more information when you're through here. We'll also be taking the opportunity to talk a little bit about dystopias in general, since Psychopass takes its inspiration from some of the best in the genre. By the end of today's video, you'll know exactly what the franchise is all about, what order to watch it in, and maybe learn a few other interesting things as well. So let's get started.
Do you stay up all night worrying about your hue? Do you live in fear that stress or a mental disorder will brand you a latent criminal and send you to a rehab facility?
Before we get into the anime itself, let's have our discussion about dystopias so we can better appreciate how brilliantly Psychopass has blended the elements into something all its own. By its most basic definition, a dystopian society is the opposite of a utopian one. That is to say, an imagined system in which everything is, in a word, perfect. Therefore, a dystopia represents a nightmarish, terrible existence for its citizens, and although there have been countless varieties, both real and imagined, some elements remain consistent. Oppression, the loss of individuality and autonomy, and unrestricted government surveillance and control are all regular players. Dystopian societies are also often disguised under or presented as ideal ones, and the harsh methods they employ are generally explained as necessary to their populations, either due to the threat of some foreign power or some other contrived reason. Early fictional examples such as Yevgeny Zamyatin's We and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World served as warnings and object lessons to the reader and showed what might happen to real-world societies if we all don't carefully maintain them, and as such possess very bleak endings. More modern stories that feature dystopian societies like The Hunger Games or V for Vendetta tend to feature protagonists who rebel against their oppressive systems and attempt to change them, but the message to the audience is usually the same. We must critically examine the present in order to protect our future. Or, as we like to say around here, think for yourself and question authority.
What needs to be done is done by those capable. Such is the grace bestowed upon mankind by the Sibyl System. Whatever that means.
The story of Psychopass takes place in the early 2100s, around 50 or 60 years after the country of Japan fully implemented what is known as the Sibyl System. Sibyl, as it's often referred to as, is a massive, omnipresent network integrated throughout the country that is used to determine every citizen's propensity for crime by conducting what are called cymatic scans. These are performed constantly, and small scanners can be found everywhere, including city streets, public gathering places, and on countless drones that monitor the population. Using the data they collect, Sibyl is able to determine each person's crime coefficient, or likelihood of breaking the law, as well as their hue, a color-coded representation of their current stress levels and mental state. The resulting assessment of these factors is known as a person's psychopass, and aside from crime prevention, is also used to determine a person's educational opportunities, career aptitude, and can greatly affect their social status and relationships. Regarding crime coefficients in particular, if the system determines a person's is under 100, no action is usually required. Between 100 and 299, the citizen will be classified as a latent criminal, apprehended, and in theory, rehabilitated. However, a person with a crime coefficient of over 300 will be deemed as beyond saving and marked for immediate execution.
He doesn't act like one, but he really is a latent criminal.
He seems just like a normal person.
While hearing the details of the Sibyl system, you were probably weighing out the positive and negative aspects in your mind. Indeed, in a perfect world where such a system was implemented completely as advertised, one might even draw the conclusion that its tactics were harsh but fair. Crime and unemployment would virtually disappear, the economy would be very stable, and in theory this would all lead to better lives and reduced stress for society at large. Furthermore, we could imagine that by the 22nd century, factors like overpopulation may have potentially led to the need for such a system, especially in a small country like Japan. However, things are rarely what they appear to be. For instance, society has collectively agreed to allow Sibyl to dictate their very lives based solely on the fact that they've been led to believe it to be flawless and run by a supercomputer that's completely free of bias. But what if it wasn't? Even if it were, what about citizens who have a natural disposition towards high levels of stress? Government-mandated medication seems to be their only viable option. Not to mention the ethical implications of punishing a citizen who only shows the potential of committing a crime before they actually do anything wrong. Even on paper, another major issue is that the system lacks external oversight and acts as judge, jury, and executioner with no restrictions or means of appeal. One might wonder, who watches the watchers? Also, not to give away one of the major points the franchise is trying to make, but it's very clear early on that the majority of latent criminals we're introduced to are just regular people like you and me, although they do possess at least one trait that Sibyl has deemed undesirable by the standards it sets for society, and that a great number, if not the majority of people living today would be immediately apprehended were they held to the same standards.
New judgment on Okura. Seems he's overextended his welcome in this world.
Elimination? Just because he got flagged by a routine street scan?
The Sibyl system and discussions relating to it make up the core of the Psychopass franchise, which consists of 3 seasons and a number of movies and anthology films. We'll take a look at each of these iterations in the order they should be viewed, but I think we should first cover the organization that employs our protagonists throughout the series, the Public Safety Bureau's Criminal Investigation Department, or CID for short. Yes, Production IG loves an anime that focuses on an ensemble cast of misfits with unique abilities employed as special agents by Japan's Public Safety Bureau. Not that we're complaining. Though Sibyl is powerful indeed, it still requires boots on the ground to investigate crimes, physically apprehend offenders, and hit the like and subscribe buttons on YouTube videos. As viewers, we see the world through the eyes of those employed by the CID as either inspectors or enforcers. Inspectors are officers of the law who receive their orders directly from Sibyl itself, and those the system has deemed qualified for the position are usually very intelligent, stable, and rationally minded. They are also charged with managing their assigned enforcers, who are latent criminals that possess skills the system has deemed useful enough for them to be kept on a short leash in lieu of confinement at an isolation facility. Used like dogs to flush out and hunt down other criminals like themselves, enforcers are kept under strict supervision at all times.
Dominator usage approved. You are a valid user.
You'll get used to that. Before long, it'll blend right in with your own thoughts.
The officers of the CID are equipped with the franchise's iconic Dominators, which are firearms directly connected to Sibyl. These weapons are usable only by those registered with the system and are capable of scanning a target's Psychopass in order to determine if enforcement action is required. While it usually only stuns its target so they can be easily apprehended, the Dominator's full potential is unlocked when it scans a person with a crime coefficient over 300 and becomes an extremely deadly and efficient weapon.
Man, those Dominators kick serious ass when they get fired up.
I feel it's very important for me to point out that Psycho-Pass purposefully features a juxtaposition of gorgeous animation and often adorable imagery with extremely violent scenes and very mature subject matter. I say purposefully because this feature brilliantly accentuates some of the anime's central themes and forces the viewer to confront the ethical questions the show is trying to explore. However, it's certainly something to take into account when deciding whether or not to engage with the franchise.
Very smart people have found a way to analyze a person's mind. The intelligence of science finally uncovered the secret of our souls, and our society has changed drastically because of it.
The original season of Psycho-Pass begins by introducing us to our point-of-view character, Akane Tsunemori, on her very first night as an inspector for the CID. Young, idealistic, and somewhat naive, Tsunemori, as she is presented to us at the beginning of the series, is possibly the ideal citizen in the eyes of Sibyl. Possessing a remarkably light hue and extremely low crime coefficient, she could have chosen nearly any career for herself, but decided to join the CID because she believes she may find her true purpose there. Through her perspective, we're introduced to the world of the franchise as well as the rest of the season's memorable cast, including Enforcer Shinya Kogami, who becomes another very important character. Throughout the course of the first season, our protagonist must find a way to take down perhaps the most dangerous criminal Japan has faced since the launch of Sibyl, and in the process learn the true nature of the system itself.
I made a judgment call, with the future firmly in mind.
Inspector, on this one, you're flat out wrong.
Psycho-Pass 2 premiered in 2014 and takes place about 18 months after the events of the first season. With all the experience she's gained, Tsunemori takes a more veteran role in the CID, but she and her mostly new team must tackle a far more complex and insidious threat than they've ever handled before, and one that seeks to dismantle the system from within. Although it's been criticized for not quite reaching the high standards set by the show's first season due to a change in head writer and different studio providing the animation, Psycho-Pass 2 is still appreciated for delving more deeply into the world of the franchise and for its strong individual episodes and action. In 2015, a feature-length film called Psycho-Pass the Movie premiered in Japan and was met with praise for its expansion of the franchise's lore, as well as for its compelling storyline. After capturing a group of terrorist mercenaries sent from the Southeast Asia Union, a fictional superstate potentially even more dystopian than 22nd century Japan, Tsunemori and her team discover images of their former enforcer Shinya Kogami, who disappeared after the events of the first season. Akane travels to the foreign nation, which is engaged in civil war and has recently begun implementing elements of the Sibyl System itself, and becomes embroiled in a conspiracy that will require the help of her old friend and colleague in order to unravel. Next, Psycho-Pass Sinners of the System debuted in 2019 and consists of 3 separate hour-long films that detail the backstories and motivations of characters introduced to us in the first 2 seasons. Titled Crime and Punishment, First Guardian, and Beyond Love and Hate respectively, Sinners of the System received overall positive reviews and contains hints to and sets the stage for the franchise's next season.
I'm going to find it, Dad. The truth.
Psycho-Pass 3 premiered late in the same year as Sinners of the System and centers on 2 brand new protagonists for the series, Arata Shindo and Kei Mikhail Ignatov. Partners and rookie investigators with the CID, the 2 were childhood friends and are both driven by uncovering the details of the tragic accident that claimed the lives of Arata's father and Kei's brother, which they investigate while working cases related to the mysterious entity known as Bifrost. Helpfully, Inspector Arata possesses the ability to mentally experience a person's memories by aligning with the target's mind using a technique called mental tracing. However, using this ability risks losing one's own identity and sense of self, requiring K to act as his rope, monitoring his hue and pulling him out before he becomes totally lost.
Everyone brace for impact!
The feature film titled Psychopaths 3 First Inspector premiered in 2020 and concludes the storyline established in Season 3. Presented as a trio of 45-minute-long episodes, First Inspector features strong character dynamics, action, and expands the franchise's philosophical themes while setting up a potential future for the franchise, leaving fans hopeful that Psychopaths 4 could be on the horizon.
Knowing you, I'm guessing you already have a plan?
If we're dealing with who I think we are here, there is a way we can win this.
Good enough for me.
Finally, Psychopaths Providence, the most recent iteration of the series, premiered in 2023 and takes place between the events of Season 2 and 3, and as such could be viewed then, as opposed to at the very end of your Psychopaths journey. The film was announced as part of the franchise's 10-year anniversary celebration, and fans were thrilled to see the return of the original cast once again in a feature film. The plot sees our beloved characters take on the Peacebreakers, a foreign military organization with the goal of undermining the Japanese government and the Sibyl System itself. Well received by both critics and audiences, Providence answered some important lingering questions and directly sets up the events of Psychopaths 3.
The people you're about to meet are humans, just like us. Trust them, but at the same time, be careful and remember who they are. Those people are what we call enforcers.
Psychopaths is a brilliant and ambitious anime franchise, and while not all of its iterations have taken full advantage of its incredible setting, they have each explored new aspects of what life in such a society would actually be like. The franchise has combined the social engineering of Brave New World with the concept of pre-crime from Minority Report, thrown in the ever-vigilant telescreens from 1984, sprinkled on top a mixture of elements from other amazing dystopian stories and science fiction masterpieces, and wrapped it all up in a package inspired by Blade Runner and Ghost in the Shell. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more introductions to outstanding films, shows, and anime. Now, off to your next class.